Hi guys, today we're going to take a further look at the great tracks that are available through third parties in Assetto Corsa. These tracks have mostly been created by enthusiasts, fans of the game. So let's take a look at them and see what other gems we can find. If you didn't see the first part of this series, take a look at this video right now. The first of our tracks in this video is Tor Poznań 2.0. I've probably butchered that name terribly, but this is a Polish track built in the 1970s and brought to life to us by the kind community. It features quite a flat landscape, but it has some nice track details as you see as we go through this lap, and it kind of reminds me a little bit of Snetterton in that it's reasonably flat, but it has quite close grass verges which you can run off on, and it doesn't cause you too much harm. The curbs are nicely sawtoothed, so you definitely feel it when you go over those. The track details are pretty cool. You can see side roads coming off in the distance. You can see these inflatables every so often, which I think they're advertisement boards. And generally, it's a nice little circuit to drive around. It has flat chicanes, which make for a great little straight line grass excursion. Maximise the speed through. And I think it's just fast and flowing. It really does feel like a nice place to drive around. If you look at race department, you can see the level of detail this modder has put into this track. It's laser scanned and it has some winter scenes available. It also has a drift layout if you're interested in that kind of thing. It's quite a short circuit, so you learn it pretty quickly. It's the main track is 4 kilometers in length. And the track's quite wide, so you can do some close racing with your fellow racers. There's also a karting variant of this circuit, which is 1.4 kilometers with the same width. You can have some fun racing karts around here too. Next on our list we have LA Canyons 1.2. This is a circuit based on the mountain range around San Gabriel in California, and it consists of some tight and twisty sections, which is kind of perfect really for racing and drifting. It has some fast sweepers, is huge at 42 kilometers long, and yeah, it's just this really interesting road circuit in a mountain range. It has lots of scenery around it, and it does suffer a little bit because of the level of detail in that it's had to be simplified somewhat in order for it to perform well on any reasonable hardware. So you do, for example, see a lot of kind of fog in the distancing and the mountain range, but that doesn't really detract from the charm of this circuit. It's still a great little ride around. It probably does suit drifting a little more than road racing, but when I was racing around it I had a lot of fun. At 42 kilometers long it is hard to learn it properly, so I spent a few laps just plodding around at the back just to get a feel for the track itself. It has a lot of variation in that there are some guardrail sections which keep you nice and penned in so you don't drop off a cliff, but it has some open sections as well which are a little more precarious. You have to be a bit more aware of what you're doing. It's nice to see the trackside signs, which are effectively road signs, and some of them are reversed so you don't see them in the direction of travel that you do unless you do it on the reverse circuit. I really like it for a bit of a potter around. It's another one of those countryside drives that I seem to love so much. this time in North America. The AI doesn't really seem to get on too well with this place, and I don't know if you see as we drive around, but you see more than the odd car just on a cliffside where it's dropped off, or it's missed its line and gone straight on into the cliff. So definitely a better track to be driving around with people rather than AI. It has a number of layouts, as we talked about earlier, that you have the reverse normal layouts. There's a free roam. Next we're on to more tropical climbs with the Thomson Road Grand Prix circuit in Singapore, filled with lots of palm trees and 3 miles of street circuit. It's built from scratch. This is another Bat Alfie circuit. It has full support for AI, hot lapping and time attacks with a 24 grid spaced layout. So this track was used between the 60s and early 70s, and as I said before, it's just under 5 kilometers. It's a pretty tricky layout, but as with all Bat Alfie circuits, it's very well detailed. It also has historic based scenery, so it's a good fit for older vehicles. You have a little bit of runoff on the grass verges, but the trees are not far away, so you don't want to be using too much of that. Quite a tricky layout to get used to. The AI came a cropper more than once around it, and these sharp little curbstones that you see along the track are not particularly nice to drive on either. It's quite nice to see the tree-lined circuit. However, I did feel a little bit claustrophobic after a little while of driving around here. It definitely feels like you're hemmed in. A little bit like those 90s rally games where you were corridor driving, and it felt a little bit like that. But still a pretty circuit to look at, and I like the layout. It was quite fun to drive. So we go from the historic Thomson circuit to this modern reflection of the Canadian Mosport circuit with a 2020 surface, as they resurfaced it during the pandemic. Now, this circuit is very short. It's 10 corners long and 4 kilometers. Means it's pretty easy to learn, although it's hard to master. It has a lot of undulation, which is great, and some of the corners you find that the AI really struggle on. I'm sure it's a fantastic venue for playing online. Scenery wise, it's up there with some of the better circuits. I mean, it could have had some more detail, but it's a reflection of the circuit itself, so I think that should give it pretty decent marks. It's always helped by the fact that the track is not flat, so you've got this undulation that helps to convey a little more detail in the circuit. It has traditional grass runoffs, which I always like. There are a few little tarmac sections that help you to keep traction, but of course that just means you're likely to cheat it a little more. I just found it a lot of fun to drive around. It's a circuit that was used for F1, and it's known quite widely through the community, so it's always nice to have an appearance of a fan favourite. Last of our tracks for this video, and we're in New York with Watkins Glen. If you're not familiar with this track, it was used a hell of a lot in historic racing, and I believe it's still used to this day. Personally, I remember it from the GP Legends game, and I loved the circuit back then. It is a little longer than our previous circuit that we looked at, which was Mosport. This one is about 5.5 kilometers in length with 11 turns, so one more corner than the previous track. The layout is really cool. You see a lot of camper vans on the hillside, and the nature of the circuit with the hilly landscape, it really highlights some of those details. If you're not familiar with Watkins Glen, it's a Really nice circuit to drive around. Not sure I like the modern catch fences there, but obviously they're there for safety reasons, and this virtual version has the same in place. The AI can safely negotiate the track, and whilst it has a lot of tarmac runoff areas now, which doesn't necessarily detract from the circuit's charm. I'd still like the nice flat chicanes which are fun to drive over. Overall, I think the circuit's very well detailed. It's definitely one of my favourites to drive around of the 10 we've looked at so far. I'm looking forward to having a blast around here in a 1960s F1 car. This is another mod by Lilski, who we saw in our previous video. So there we can see some new grade options to extend the life of Assetto Corsa. I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you have, please give it the thumbs up, subscribe to the channel, and leave some comments below for feedback. Feedback is always welcome. Until next time, guys, stay safe. Bye-bye.